Hello everyone, it's Mylixia from Twitch and YouTube's Mylixia TV, bringing you a video I'd like to share today, the Hearthstone Introduction Guide, an all-encompassing guide to dominating at Hearthstone very quickly. I've had a lot of requests from my community to make a video like this, since a lot of new players are coming into this awesome game and want to check it out. This video is going to provide you with everything you need to know to get started with the game and to understand it, and to get very good at it very quickly. So without further ado, I want to move into understanding the game. So what is Hearthstone? If you've ever heard of Magic the Gathering or other TCGs, tradable card games, Hearthstone is an online version of those card games. You have 9 classes total, and the games are always 1v1. Your objective is to defeat your enemy with both monster cards and power cards, which we'll be showing you in a second. There is only one condition in Hearthstone at the time of making this video, and that's reducing your opponent's total life from 30 to 0. Very easy to remember. Every opponent, and both you and your opponent start off with 30 life. And your objective is to do enough damage to them before they do enough damage to you to reduce their life to 0. So each class in the game has a rather unique power that costs 2 mana to use. And I want to go over those first before we get into anything else. So we're going to look at the Shaman first. And the Shaman is a class that features totems, which have different effects. Some of them can block damage for you, some of them can increase the damage of your spells, and some of them can do damage themselves. And they cost 2 mana to summon a random one. And the class in general focuses on a couple of unique mechanics that we'll go over a little bit later. The Warrior is a very simple one. You add 2 armor to your hero for 2 power, which means the armor is basically effectively life. It's adding 2 extra life. In this game, you can't actually go over 30 life. So armor is very useful because you can go over 30 life with it and you can have infinite armor, which is really neat. The Rogue class summons a 1/2 weapon, which you can use to damage other creatures or your enemy. You can also buff that weapon with some of the Rogue cards, and it does a lot of extra damage. The Paladin summons a 1/1 minion into play, and that cannot attack this turn. And it can do that for 2 mana, and you can use all of these hero powers once. So you can get 1/1 minion per turn. The Hunter deals 2 damage to the enemy hero instantly, and that's really straightforward. It can't hit creatures, it can't do anything else. And the Druid adds 1 armor permanently to your hero, and 1 attack for that turn. So it's the only other class in the game that can actually get armor from a hero power. The Warlock takes 2 damage in order to draw 1 card. So you can draw an extra card up to a maximum of 10, and all players have to start discarding cards at 10 cards. The Mage deals 1 damage to anything. Just straight damage either to a hero or a monster or anything you want to do. And the Priest heals 2 damage to anything, including your hero or yourself or anything. But remember, you can't heal above 30 damage, so if it's above 30 health. So if you have 30 health total, then the maximum that you can heal is 0. If you have 28, you can heal back up to 30, right? And every class has a little bit of uniqueness to it, and they all have kind of different mechanics that you'll learn over time. I want to go to the board. So I took a picture of the Hearthstone board. This is your very standard Hearthstone board right now, and what you can look at. So we're going to go over this board one at a time and kind of get an idea of what everything does. So the first thing you have to understand is this is your mana. So the mana right now reads 0 out of 4, and the enemy's mana right now reads 0 out of 2. That means I've just spent 4 mana to do something. Every game, you start your turn by getting another one of these mana crystals up to 10. 10 is the maximum amount of mana crystals you can have. If you have a card that actually increases your mana above 10, then you will draw 1 card instead of increasing your mana, which is important to note. So your total mana basically dictates everything. The cards that are up here basically are the cost that it takes in these crystals to use. This right here is your hero power. We discussed that in the previous section. Every champion has a different hero power. In this case, this hero has the Druid hero power, which adds 1 armor and 1 attack. In this little droplet of blood, you have your life, and your life starts at 30, and will always start at 30, and can be decreased to 0 for the win condition or the lose condition for the game. Then we have the current board. So right here on this side is your creatures, is your stuff in play. You always have the board always faces you, and when they're playing, the board always faces them. So you'll never be flipped. You'll never be on the enemy side. You'll always see that this is your side. And on this side of the board, separated by this little line right here, you'll see that the enemy's creatures are in play. Likewise, this is the enemy's total life, and this is the enemy's hero power, the totem that we mentioned that he can summon for 2 mana. You'll see your cards in your hand. Every turn passes, and you have a certain number of cards in your hand. The next turn, you get 1 card and 1 mana, up to a maximum of 10 each. Very easy to remember. The only last thing you need to know for this board is this is the history. If you wanted to look at anything that was played, whether it be a creature power or a hero, you can look at it here and you'll see that. Okay, so that's the board. And now we can check out cards and learning terminology. So this is kind of the most important part of Hearthstone. I want to take a look at the cards first. So this is your standard creature card right here. This is the cost to play it, which is 12. And you'll see that this card actually costs more than the maximum mana you have. The reason for this is because of its ability right here, the text. So this card costs 1 less for each other card you have in your hand. And you have to read this ability text in order to understand the cards that you have. It's very important. A lot of times cards will have some kind of special effect, or they'll interact differently with other cards depending on what that text says. It's also kind of called flavor text, right? The little gem in the middle is the rarity of the card. A purple gem indicates that it's an epic card. Epic cards are actually quite rare. A blue gem indicates that it's a rare card, and a white gem indicates that it's a common card. So you'll find them all over the place. If it has a dragon around it, you'll see a dragon eclipsing this. That means it's a legendary card, the rarest in the game, pulled in about 1 in 20 packs. So every creature has an attack power and a defense. This attack power means how much damage they can do to either an enemy minion or how much damage they can do to an enemy hero. So with 30 life in the game, an enemy hero cannot survive too long against this mountain giant. This is a very big card. An 8/8 is a very strong card. Defense, likewise, is a stat of how much damage the creature can take before it dies. And as you lose defense, you do not regenerate health naturally in this game. So if you deal 4 damage to this mountain giant, it becomes an 8/4. It does not become an 8/8 next turn or heal. It loses its life until it's off the board, unless you heal it some other way. Also important to note. So mana cost, how much it costs of your little mana crystals to use. Flavor text, attack power, and defense. Now the second thing you have is spells. And spells and powers are usually specific to a class. As of this video, there are no neutral spells, I believe. I believe that all spells are specific and powers are specific to classes. This one happens to be specific to the mage class. So these cards do not have attack power and defense. They actually just play an ability, and they act as instantaneous powers. They may actually be an instantaneous power that summons a creature, but for the purpose of this, it's an instantaneous power. So you spend 2 of your mana crystals, and you deal 3 damage to anything. Then you get the special effect freeze, which we'll explain later. So powers can be used to instantly change the board in your favor. And that's what these 2 cards do. So this is the 2 types of cards you're going to run into in Hearthstone. Let's look at learning terminology. This is pretty important. So terminology in this game, you'll see these kind of words come up. And they're very important to know because they do certain things. A lot of them are really simple once you master them. But we're going to go over all of the ones that I think are important right now. And we'll just move through them real quick. So battle cry, you'll see this on minions that are played. And when a battle cry happens, it means that the text that it says is then played when the minion is played. So let's say the battle cry is your friendly minion gains +1/+1. It says battle cry, friendly minion gains +1/+1. Then if you have another creature on the board and you play that card, that is now active. That's what battle cry does. Charge is really simple. Just means you can attack immediately. Normally it takes 1 turn for something that's a magic term called summoning sickness to wear off. If you play a creature card, you usually have to wait 1 turn in order for that card to actually be able to attack. And in this case, charge makes that attack immediately. Okay, combo. You'll see this with a lot of rogues. What combo does is it provides a regular ability power, and then if you actually play a card before you play that card, you get an extra power. So let's use an example. Let's say that a card does 2 damage, and the combo ability is you play 4 damage. So let's say that I play a card first, like the Mountain Giant, and then I use the next card. That counts as that card, and I get that combo bonus. So play another card first, and you get that combo bonus. Death Rattle is pretty simple. It's kind of like the reverse of Battle Cry. What it does is if your creature dies, the activatable text happens. So let's say that the Death Rattle is deal 2 damage to enemy hero. There's a card that does that, called a Leper Gnome. If that card dies, it deals its Death Rattle to the enemy hero. Divine Shield makes you immune to the damage that you are dealt the first time. So if I have an 8/8 Mountain Giant and I have a 1/1 with Divine Shield, that Mountain Giant can hit that creature for 8, and it simply just absorbs its Divine Shield. The Divine Shield goes away after 1 time, and it's still just a little 1/1. And so it literally did 8 damage, and it didn't suffer at all. But it does not prevent the card from direct destruction, which is really important. So if you have a card that says destroy a minion, that Divine Shield doesn't protect it. It just dies. So it will only protect you from sources of direct damage. Enrage is an effect where if a card is damaged, it gains its ability. So let's say +3 attack if enraged. Enrage +3 attack. If I have a 3/3 and it's damaged once, that then becomes a 6/2 or a 6/1, whatever damage was dealt to it. It gets that enrage effect. Freeze is pretty straightforward. You'll see this in a lot of mage compositions. What freeze does is a frozen creature or hero does nothing the next turn. It can't act. So a creature can't attack. Overload, this is a lot of stuff, right, is a shaman mechanic, which means you have that much less mana to play per turn, the next turn. So, for 1 turn. So let's say that you play a card that has an overload of 2. That means you have 2 less mana to use total out of the amount that you regenerate, since you regenerate your mana to full, for the next turn, for 1 turn. So let's say you have 5 mana total, you play a card that costs 3 and overloads for 2. That means the next turn, you'll have 4 mana, because you lock 2 out of your 5, and then you gain an extra. So 3 + 1 for 4. Silence removes all text from a card. Makes it completely irrelevant. So if you have silence is a very powerful ability in Hearthstone. It's one of the most important abilities to understand how you use it and what it does. So let's say that a creature gains +4/+4 off an enrage, right? And you damage that creature, and it's now very large. If you silence that minion, it loses its enrage effect. If you silence it, it loses its Death Rattle. It loses its Divine Shield. All of these abilities are lost when you silence something. So it can't enrage, it can't Divine Shield. Any buffs or cards or enhancements that are on it are removed. Silence is very, very powerful. Stealth is used by a lot of rogues, but it's also used in some neutral cards. You can't be attacked or targeted for any kind of damage directly, but you can still be AoE'd to death. AoE is an area of effect ability. You can be area of affected, and it will still kill your creature. Taunt means you must attack it first before you can attack anything else. Taunt basically means prioritize this minion, and that's it. You have to deal damage to that minion before you deal any damage to anything else. That does not affect direct damage spells. For example, Frostbolt. Frostbolt you can just throw right at the hero or throw it whatever you want. The only thing it affects is minions that have to attack, or if your hero attacks with a weapon. Wind Fury means that you can attack twice. Either your champion can attack, or your creature can attack. And looking back, something that I just briefly forgot to mention, but is kind of important. Right here, you'll have a weapon slot appear if you have a card that can give your champion a weapon, which allows your hero to actually attack the enemy. And so taunt actually affects that. So for example, the hero power for the rogue is summon a 1/2 dagger, which then is and that dagger has durability, which means that every time you use it, it loses a part. So 1-1, 1-2, 1-1, and then gone. And that is a weapon you can use to do any damage, but you're still affected by taunt there. Okay, so we'll get into that. Now, let's go into some of the kind of core concepts. These are some of the things that are really important to note about Hearthstone, and these are the things that you need to know pretty clearly to be able to get ahead in the game. So the first thing to understand is card advantage. Card advantage is a really simple concept. It just means how many cards do I have in my hand and how many things do I have the ability to play versus how many cards does he have in his hand and how many, or she, and how many cards are they able to play. Now, if I have 7 cards and he has 1, I have a lot of options to be able to play. So card advantage is pretty important. Warlocks use this a lot because they have that extra draw mechanic that we were mentioning before. You can take that 2 damage to draw that card. So Warlocks often have card advantage. It's one of the very powerful abilities of the class. They sacrifice life for that advantage because they have to take the damage, the 2 damage, to be able to get the card. What that means is that life is a resource in this game and has to be looked at as such. You have to balance life with what you're also doing in the game. How about board control? So board control, going back to our diagram, board control means who has board control right now in this game. Well, he has a lot of creatures with the taunt effect, which is this gray shield. And I have 1/4/5. So in theory, he has a lot of board control and I have a lot of board control because if no other cards are played, he would have to actually kill both of his wolves to be able to do enough damage to me, and he would still not be able to kill this Yeti. This Yeti means, this Chill One Yeti is the name of this creature. And that means that he's going to have to do a lot of freaking damage to take that thing down, but that's why Shamans also have spell cards and would be able to deal with this card, right? So I can also always heal that or use abilities. So right now the board control is about even, considering he probably has a little bit more of an advantage. And it gets a little bit more technical from here, but that's kind of where I want to go with that. So board control simply means who has control of the board in terms of creature dominance. And a lot of the time you'll play decks that need to focus exclusively on board control. Sometimes you'll play decks that focus exclusively on just doing damage and you don't worry about board control. It really does depend. How about mana debt? If I play a card for 2 mana and it takes the enemy 4 mana to remove that card, then I'm ahead. Because of the way that mana crystals work, you have a limited amount of mana to spend every turn. And relative to you and your enemy, you have about the same mana to spend every turn. So, what that means is when you make an enemy go into mana debt repeatedly, they'll most likely lose that game. Because if they're spending more mana to remove your cards than you're spending to actually play those cards, you're going to win. Likewise, if you're spending less mana to remove the cards than they're spending, then you're likely to win. So always be looking at that mana debt. That's a really important thing that I just just learned about. That's really exciting. So mana debt is a very interesting conversation, just to have in your head and be like, huh, how much did I spend to remove that creature? He spent 3, but I spent 5, so I'm 2 down for next turn, right? You can think about that. And then the last core concept that I wanted to explain was damage trading. So damage trading is simply, let's say you have a 5/5 creature out and an 8/8 creature out. And you deal 8 damage to that 5/5. Well, you've just effectively done 3 damage of overkill that you didn't need to do. Ideally, you'd want to do exactly 5 damage to that creature and keep your creature up as healthy as possible. So maybe you can use a damage spell that would do exactly 5 damage to that creature. And then you could attack the enemy hero with that 8/8. And that would be a lot better play because you would actually be able to have your 8/8 be healthy. And you would have traded the exact amount of damage that you needed to kill that creature. So thinking about mana debt and damage trading will help you really understand this game at a pretty core level. And that is the kind of idea of the core concepts I want to go through. So how do you get started? The first thing to do is go into practice and play every single practice match and try to get your cards unlocked. So we're going to show you in Hearthstone how that actually works. And these are the practice creatures that you will start with these decks, and you can choose any of the classes that you want. And all of my cards are unlocked. You have the potential to unlock, I believe it's 20 basic cards first. So you should play through all of these and just fight through the normal opponents to learn the game. These guys are all, these are NPCs. You fight against a guy named the Innkeeper, and we're going to be doing a game in a couple of minutes against the Innkeeper. And it's really easy to get a good grasp of the game like this and just kind of learn that. So that's what I would legitimately say. The second thing, once you've practiced against NPCs, is to play arena matches. Arena matches cost 150 gold to enter, or $1.50, but you should almost never pay for it. You'll get gold, which is the resource in Hearthstone to get things, naturally throughout your play period. And every 3 games awards you with 10 gold. And then there are daily quests, which can be 40 gold, 60 gold, or 100 gold, depending on your, and we'll talk about that in a minute, depending on what quest you get. It is always better to play arena matches to get cards than to open packs, in my opinion. The reason is because it costs very little to get into the arena, and every time you play in the arena, you're guaranteed 1 pack, even if you lose all the games. And let's talk about the arena and how that works real quickly. So the way the arena works is you are going to play a total of 12 games, usually. I believe actually it can be higher than that if you lose games. So you play until you lose 3 games. And once you lose those 3 games, you get awarded a set of prizes based on how many games you won. The maximum games you can win is 12. So I believe you can go 12-3 and play a total of 15 games in the arena, in one arena. 150 gold gets you in, 3 losses gets you out. The arena is randomly constructed cards. No matter what cards you own, you will be able to choose from random cards 3 at a time. You'll be able to choose 1 out of 3, and they'll pop up until you have 30 cards of your total deck. Any deck has 30 cards in it. You'll see that number pop up a lot. 30 life, 30 cards. So the way to get cards is arenas, because even if you lose 3 every single time, you'll learn a hell of a lot, and then you'll also get an expert pack. What they call the regular pack is an expert pack. You can't buy any other packs right now. And that's what you might as well do. Every expert pack is guaranteed 1 rare card. And I believe you get an epic approximately 1 in 5 packs, and you get a legendary card 1 in 20 packs. Okay, so that's the way to get cards easily. Daily quests are something you are given every day on Hearthstone. I believe that at server time, which is 3 o'clock in the morning, Pacific Standard Time, a daily quest will come up, either for 40 gold, 60 gold, or 100 gold. You should always do what's called re-rolling 40 gold quests. So when you go into your quest, you'll see a little X button. And if you have a 40 gold quest, just click that X button because you have a high chance to get a 60 or 100 gold quest. So don't only do your quest after you re-roll it if it's 40 gold. If it's 60 or 100, I would keep it. And finally, use the resources included with this presentation. Down in the YouTube links, I'm going to provide 2 very good resources to get started with really basic decks. I recommend some of the other guides on this channel that I'll be posting, including the Warlock deck, are very cheap and very effective to get good at ranked very quickly. Okay, so I want to actually play a game on this video because I feel like it'll help us kind of understand everything that that we've been talking about. We're just going to kind of put it all together now. So I'm going to play a really simple deck called a Zoo deck. And we're going to play it against just a normal Innkeeper so I can do my commentary and kind of get everything going. So this should kind of cover like anything else that I missed. And this is a Warlock deck.
Gul'dan versus Garrosh.
So here we go. Okay, so the first option you get in a game is to do what's called a mulligan. You get to replace any card in your hand that you want and redraw random cards. So in this hand, I have 1 creature for 1, and this deck is centered around doing a lot of damage very quickly. I see that the mana cost of my Dark Iron Dwarf is very high. It's 4 mana cost. And since I only start with 1 mana, I want to mulligan both of these cards and replace them. That makes sense? So what I want to do is I want to only keep this card and replace both of these in hopes of getting cards that cost a little bit less mana to work with. And indeed I did get that, which is great. And so we're going to begin. These cards are called gold cards. They're kind of just like, they don't do anything extra. They're just special animated versions of the cards that you would normally have. Okay, so it's turn 1. I've gained 1 mana crystal. I am unable to use my hero power yet, which draws and takes 2 damage. and I will instead look at what I can do here. I can use my ability for Soulfire to deal 4 damage. I could use a taunt, which is a 0-4, a very powerful play early. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and play my Flame Imp. And you'll see the Battle Cry is now activated and deals 3 damage to my hero, putting me at 27 life. But I have a 3-2 on the board for practically nothing. And now I'm going to end my turn. So just click that end turn button. So it's turn 1, and I have a 3-2. He decides to do nothing this turn, which is likely means that he has no mana to do anything this turn. That's pretty common for warriors. Now I have 2 mana. I've gained 1 mana. I could draw a card for life, or I could start to go on the offensive. And this deck is really offensive, so I want to do that. I want to go on the offensive right away. I'm going to go ahead and play a Direwolf Alpha, which gives all of my adjacent minions +1 attack. This is not a Battle Cry, which means that this is a constant ability, making this a very powerful card for 2 mana. Now that turns my Imp from a 3-2 to a 4-2. So I'm going to click on the Imp, and I'm going to go ahead and attack. And now that drops his life to 26. I could play my Soulfire this turn, but I have to discard a random card to do that. I don't particularly want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and end my turn. He chooses to play a weapon. This is the first time we've seen one of these. And he's going to automatically attack my wolf. That means that my wolf dealt 2 damage to him, but he dealt 3 damage to my wolf that killed it. Now I want to focus on taunt cards. So I want to get the most out of my mana. If I just draw, then I can only play my taunt card. I'm going to go ahead and play my taunt card. And then behind that taunt, I'll have an Amani Berserker, which has the Enrage ability, which we saw before. Then once again, I can attack with my Imp again, putting him to 21 life. Now I have a pretty good idea of board control. He can't deal enough damage this turn with just his weapon to kill my taunt minion, which means his weapon breaks since his durability is out. He decides to play 3 Murlocs. And now I have a choice in terms of strategy. What I'm going to do is I know he's at pretty low life, and so instead of focusing on killing these minions, I'm actually going to buff my existing minions. Now, if you look at this Defender of Argus, it gives all of my adjacent minions +1/+1 and taunt, which is a great ability. Meaning this becomes a 4-3, and this becomes a 1-2. Now I'm pretty threatening. So I'm going to go, since he doesn't have, none of these guys have taunt, I'm just going to go ahead and attack past these minions. And do as much damage as possible to try to win the game very quickly. Now he'll have to try to attack with these minions. And so he's going to go ahead and try to attack, and he attacks my Flame Imp. And then he attacks my taunt minion. Okay, so I have a lot of damage now. And I can look at what I want to do. There are a couple of choices. I could deal enough damage this turn to do 4 + 2, which is 8, then a Soulfire, which is 12, so I can't kill him this turn. I say 4 because I can use this Dark Iron Dwarf to give +2 attack this turn. That sounds like a pretty good idea, but what I'd also like to do is to focus on board control. So I could play another Defender of Argus, giving these taunt, making this a 3-4. Now, if I attack, I get an Enrage bonus against this creature. So let's just do that for the effect of it. And now since the Enrage is activated, since that's been damaged, it's now a 6-2. Very cool. He's definitely going to deal with that next turn with his Dragonling mechanic, and so he does. Now he plays a Gurubashi Berserker. Now this has the ability to gain 3+ attack every time it's damaged. We want to avoid that card as long as possible. So what we're going to do is we're now going to use our Dark Iron Dwarf, and we'll see if we have enough damage. We have 3 + 2, which is 5. Another 2 is 7. So we might have enough damage this turn. Let's see. So now we can do 5 damage, 2 damage, and now look, we have our Soulfire to deal 4 damage and end the game, bringing his life to 0 and winning. Great. So we never even needed to use our Warlock power to draw this turn. And the Innkeeper opponents are actually pretty easy. No problem. So we can, so we just played that, and now I actually will probably just play one more card. One more deck, excuse me. To be able to kind of show you some different styles and just kind of show you and maybe explain again like what's going on. So we're going to actually play a deck with a lot of cool cards, right? And we'll choose this one, and we'll play against a, let's see. How about a Druid? And hopefully this deck will actually show you some of the weapon mechanics and some other kind of neat ways that this works. This will be the last game we play.
Garrosh versus Malfurion.
Okay, cool. So the focus of this deck is to survive the early game in order to play some really big cards later. We're seeing some of those really big cards come up. This is called a Control Warrior deck. We're going to drop 3 of these, because this costs 8 mana, 5 mana, and 8 mana. Lots of mana, but we'll keep this 2 mana guy. And we'll just mulligan all those. Again, we want to mulligan those cards. They're going to take us a long time to play in favor of cards that actually are better early. Now, we're going second this time, which means we're granted the coin. He gets to play first, and so our advantage to going second is we get a card that gives us 1 mana crystal this turn. Now, I might want to use that immediately. I might want to wait. In this case, I want to use it immediately to play our Armor Smith. So I'm going to go ahead and get 2 mana for this turn and play our Armor Smith. We now have a 1/4 on the board that has a special effect. Whenever any friendly minion takes damage, we gain 1 extra armor. Pretty neat. Good for survivability. That includes if we deal damage to this creature. Now he's going to go ahead and use his hero power, which means he gains 1 armor and 1 attack, and he's going to do 1 damage to me this turn. Okay. So what can I do this turn? Well, I can't do very much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my hero power to gain 2 extra armor this turn. And then I'll go ahead and attack for 1 damage this turn with my Armor Smith. And that's a good, that's basically the end of this turn. Now he goes ahead and plays a River Crocodisk, and that's a pretty strong card. So we have a special effect ability here, which deals 2 damage to a minion. If it survives, we draw an extra card, and we always want to try to draw extra cards if we can. So we're going to go ahead and use that on this. And we draw an extra card because of it, and then we'll use 1 damage on our Armor Smith, which then gives us an extra armor because of the effect on the card. Pretty neat, right? Okay. He's going to go ahead and use his hero power to deal 1 damage to us, but it hits our armor so it doesn't affect our life. Now I have a lot of interesting choices. We can do a shield block, which draws 5 armor and draws a card. Or we could play an Alkaloid of Pain for 3, which when that minion takes damage, you draw a card. Very good synergy. So I think what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and shield block to draw a card. That puts us to 7 armor. So you can see like how much life this warrior is gaining right now from this. And we'll go ahead and end that turn. And we know we have a lot of really powerful cards, so we only really need to wait until we can play these very powerful cards. For example, this Alexstrasza is a legendary. You see that dragon around it. What that does is that sets any hero's health to 15. Very, very powerful. Okay, so this turn, I'm going to go ahead and play the Alkaloid of Pain. So whenever any minion takes damage, we draw a card. And then I'm going to go ahead and equip a weapon for 2 mana. The 3 in the side means the damage it deals. And the 2 means how many times it can be used before it ends. So we'll go ahead and deal 1 damage there. And then I'll go ahead and deal 3 damage here. Dropping his armor down and putting him to 29. And so he decides to play a Chillwind Yeti, which is a pretty scary card. And he's going to give that... Okay, now he also plays an instant power and gives it a 2/2. Now, this is a very scary card. Luckily, we have a card called Shield Slam, which deals 1 damage to a minion for each armor you have, and we actually have 7 armor. So this is the example of a perfect kill. We're going to go ahead and use that Shield Slam right away to deal 7 damage to this creature. Great. Okay. Now, we can use even more mana, and we can use even more armor, to use 2 mana to armor up to 9. And then we can play another Alkaloid of Pain with the extra 3 mana we have. We've used all 6 of our mana this turn, and we've become very, very cost-effective, as well as deal some damage. I'm going to go ahead and wait on this weapon. We don't have to use it this turn in order to just see what he plays, and maybe we'll need to use it later. Okay, this is great. So he plays a 2/7 creature. We can definitely use this. We'll see how in a second. Because this creature is 2/7, it means that he will take, he will not kill our Alkaloids of Pain. And remember, whenever we deal damage to this minion, we draw an extra card. That means we can draw 2 cards this turn and gain 2 armor by using this ability. Pretty neat, right? And we've drawn 2 cards doing that. Okay, so this has 5 life left. So how could we think about killing this turn? Well, if we use our weapon, we can't do much. But if we actually use this Cruel Taskmaster, we can deal 1 damage to any minion and give it 3 attack. Let's do that. And then we also armor ourselves up by doing that, giving us a 3-1. Now we can attack this, get the maximum value out of our card, and then now we can use our weapon to attack. And this turn, I can equip an extra weapon and then armor up again, but I can't attack again with that weapon. So we got the full value out of that Armor Smith. We used every single one of its damage to draw a card. Great. And now we're getting into that late game, which means that we have some very, very powerful cards to start playing. We have 8 mana this turn. And he's going to go ahead and attack our Alkalite, which allows us to draw another card. Great. Now we have a really cool card called Execute, which means we can deal 1 damage to something and then kill it. Now we have 8 mana, right? So I could actually play the Ragnaros the Firelord right now, which at the end of every turn deals 8 damage. But I'm actually going to wait a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and clear the board. What I want to do is I want to deal some damage here. Deal 1 damage right there. And that gives me the ability to potentially kill this creature this turn. So we're going to go ahead and use that Execute. And then we're going to use our weapon to kill this. We're going to use our huge amount of armor as a resource, right? Now we only have 7 mana left. So I'm going to go ahead and play some of those smaller creatures. This creature has a very interesting battle cry, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm just going to go ahead and armor up and wait for next turn where I'm going to play some very powerful cards. Probably Alexstrasza to set their hero life to 15. And all legendaries usually have very cool effects, so we're going to listen to that. Okay, this turn, I know that I can kill this Nightblade fairly easily with the 4-2, which is a good trade for a 4-4. So now I'm going to focus on playing my big, big cards. I'm going to play Alexstrasza. We're going to see what happens. And now we've set his life to 15. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and trade off this card here. Attack for 2. And then we'll just keep our weapon just for fun here. Normally I'd probably attack at this point because I'm so far ahead. And we'll end that turn. Now we have an 8-8 on the board. That is going to be very, very difficult to deal. Now he uses a healing touch to restore 8 health. So he's still in the game. Barely. And he attacks us for 4. Now we have a lot of interesting stuff we can play. So we're going to win within a couple of turns here. We're going to play Ragnaros the Firelord, which will deal 8 damage to something this turn. And now we have 2 mana left. I could armor up, but I do want to get this off the board. I happen to have 4 armor and another shield slam. So I'm going ahead and remove this from the game. For 1 mana. Very effective. We're going to hit with Alexstrasza for 8 damage. And then we're going to hit with our weapon. And now Ragnaros will deal damage to this, putting him at 2 life, since he targets an enemy, a random enemy, but the only enemy to target is the Druid. There it goes. So we are guaranteed to win next turn. He's going to go ahead and play a 9-5, but since this doesn't have taunt, we don't have to worry about it. And he's going to do an extra damage to our champion. Okay, I now have a huge board advantage, right? I can just auto-attack and win the game. Maybe I want to play my Grommash Hellscream, which does a charge and instantly attacks for 4. Maybe I want to play my Gorehowl for a 7 damage weapon. Maybe I want to attack with my Ragnaros or just wait for him to lose. We could do that. Just for fun, we're going to try to clear the board again, just to sort of show what we're going to be able to do. So I know at this point I could just equip this weapon. And I can very easily kill this minion for 9 damage, because it's not going to do anything there, right? The other option I had to do this turn was I could have played my Grommash Hellscream, and then I could have used 1 damage to enrage that minion, making it a 10-9, 10-8, excuse me, and then instantly attacking for that damage, right? Very good combination when you have 10 mana for a warrior, or 9 mana. So there's a lot of ways I could do this. I could take that 9 damage, but man, I don't really want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use my 2-2, and then I'm going to use my Execute ability. And now I've killed that. And now he has no way to defend. I could attack with my weapon to win. I could armor up for that last 2 mana. And we're going to just go ahead and attack with Alexstrasza. Claiming the game for a victory. Great. So that is some of the basics of Hearthstone. and I really hope that I have shown you guys some of the ways, the really exciting ways to play this game. This game is actually just incredibly fun. It is really engaging, and there's lots and lots to learn about. And I'm going to be posting our guide for Hearthstone down below. You should be able to view this presentation publicly, and once this video goes out, you'll be able to read all the terminology. The only thing I actually think I did was I might have made a slight error here. No, I didn't. Okay, I thought I said that you had to take 1 damage for the Warlock, but you actually take 2 damage, so I did get that right. Okay, very good. So that's our guide, and I really hope this has been helpful to new Hearthstone players. I encourage you to get into the game as soon as possible. It is very, very fun, and contrary to popular belief, you don't really need a lot of cards to get started. I'm going to be offering some guides in the next couple of days on this YouTube channel. They're going to show you some really powerful decks you can get started with almost immediately, and will be able to just dominate the game. I really, really hope this has helped you. This has been a very exciting game for me, and I'd love to get more members of the community into this game to talk about it. So that was my objective in creating this video. I hope it was helpful, and you can always visit my Twitch TV channel, and I'll answer any questions you have about the game. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I will see you guys again really, really soon.